as Vern Gagne's All-Star Wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once, if you would.
You understand?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
Hello, Mickheads. What is going on? It is time for AWA Unleashed. We like to call ourselves the preeminent #1 podcast dedicated to telling the stories and reliving the memories of what we consider to be a fairly over promotion in the wrestling business, the American Wrestling Association, hence the AWA. Very, very smart branding on our part. I think that's fair to say. And out of all of the words, that intro still, Joe, it is just the cat's meow. It is awesome. But there's one word that I don't know that would really apply to us, and that is unbelievable. Well, no, wait, maybe it would, but I don't know if the context is really what we need.
Maybe not believable.
Not believable.
Okay, see ya. We'll see
I'll
you.
let you guys figure that out, and if you find a viewer or listener that gives a shit, you let me know.
Well,
okay.
that one viewer might be in a coma at the moment, and can't change
Listener!
anything else.
Viewer! I don't see him. My cats are gonna come running down like, what do you want? What do you want? Well, at least my cats will listen. Your cat will listen. Your dog will listen. Joe's dogs will listen. If you've got pets that like wrestling, have them subscribe, okay? Because we are pet inclusive.
And
We absolutely are. Yeah.
They're all
Hey.
trying to go outside and get away from us right now.
They are. Hey, we are gonna have some fun today. This is a show that has been requested for quite some time, and I'm going to put it on me, Mike Moran, my buddy, the guy who's proud that he scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, with his Texas Hangman gimmick. He has been kind of asking me if I have been in touch with our guest today. And I was like, I'm going to get around to it. I talked to him a little bit, and then other stuff kind of came in and, went, but we've got it. But before we get to him, if you're not interested in the plug, fast forward to the 4-minute and 50-second mark. It's going to be 90 seconds in 3, 2, and 1. I just like to see if I can always hit the mark. Hey, first of all, you guys, we do have, you know what, Joe? Screw that. I don't want to see that. You got to let me do my thing, okay? This is part of the gimmick. We do have a line. I'm just kidding. I'll put you back. We have a new line of AWA Unleashed merchandise. You can see it right there. TeePublic user Unleashed Plus. Go to it. You can get your Slick Mick. I'm a Slick Mick guy merchandise. Even if you don't believe it, just buy it. Okay? You don't even have to like it. Just buy. I mean, I'm a Slick Mick guy, so it applies. We do have. I'm working on some brand new stuff. I finally got a little bit of free time. Hopefully it's up by the time that this actually drops. So it's going to be great. I love doing it. It's another way to support the show. Also, as well, we do have our Patreon, which just continues to grow. You guys, we're very, very happy. Just dropped an interview with Caitlin Diamond from MAW. Just a fantastic individual, super talented. Pinfall, $4.99 a month. You get access to our live streams. You get our watch-alongs. You get the podcast a day early. You get exclusive non-AWA interviews. So $4.99 a month. You get the welcome letter and the magnet and the sticker from me. You get a 5-pack of Slick Mick picks, not of Slick Mick, but Slick Mick picks. If you want to pick a Slick Mick, just let him know. All right, 3, 2, and 1.
As long as he's not a Slick Mick dick pic, we're good.
Well, Slick Mick dick pic is not part of it, but you know what? Do you guys ever see the Seinfeld episode where George Costanza there was a picture of the model that slipped in, and then he kind of put a picture of himself in, and it was an accident. And do you guys ever remember that?
No.
No.
Okay, good talk. Let's get into our guest here, guys, because all the plugging and the promotion is done. And that's your go watch that one episode of Seinfeld. Who's a sexy boy? Slick Mick, take it away. No connection to sexy boys.
Jeez, what a whirlwind open that was. That'll put asses in the seats besides us. The guest today, every once in a while in this wrestling business, you have somebody who has been a friend for a long, long time. It's a business full of acquaintances and, kind of half-hearted friendships, I guess, locker room camaraderie. But this gentleman, I can honestly say, I have been a friend with him for 50 plus years. And when he started in the AWA, I certainly never envisioned the success that he would go on to, not denigrating his abilities, but you just don't look into the future and think this guy is going to make it huge. Well, he did. And we're going to call him by a couple of different names today because he gained success with both. But first of all, we're going to call him Frankie Hill. And there he is, looking great.
Good morning.
Francis,
Good
how are
morning.
you? How are you, buddy?
Oh, well, it's early in the morning. I'm still up. I'm like an old Indian teacher of mine used to say, you're above ground and pumping air. I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And you and I talked before we went on the air, and it's hard to believe the last time that I saw you, I was thinking, was there time in between? But there wasn't.
Nope.
1991 at Australia's Wonderland, just outside of Sydney, Australia. We were there with a IWA tour, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But my God, you're looking great. We're happy to have you. And like Chris said, you're over, buddy. People are asking, when are you going to get the Chief on the show? We're glad you're here.
Well, I'm glad to be on, guys. Let's go back to Sydney just a second there, Mick.
Sure, yeah.
I think it was our last show that we did at Australia's Wonderland. And I'd done something that I realized at the time we should have been doing all along. And Chris, you'll get a kick out of this. When was the last time you ever heard of a ring announcer being announced at a show?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
Good
I don't.
point.
Yeah,
Good
I don't
point.
think I can't remember it.
Okay, here's what happened.
Okay.
Mick's all cute and pretty, got his little suit and tie on, and looking
Sexy boy. See, I knew it.
looking all buff and sharp. And he starts to go out, and I says, "Stop. Just stand here a second, and I'll give you the time when to go." So I grab the microphone that's off camera, and I go, "Ladies and gentlemen, now we would like to introduce the IWA Premier Ring Announcer, Mr. Mick Karch." And I slapped him on the butt. He went out there to a thunderous applause. And I realized that when that happened, I said, shit, we should have been doing this all along.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. It was a thunderous, I'm not sure it was a thunderous applause, maybe more than a brief shower. But I do appreciate it, Chief. And it was so great. We're going to talk about that tour, but I know the guys have lots of questions for you. So I think, Joe, you're going to kick it off.
Yeah, Frankie, asked this with a lot of our guests, but before you got into the business, what was your athletic background? Did you play sports growing up?
The only organized sport I really played was basketball in high school. I played Little League baseball, and I realized at the time I turned about 12 years old, me and baseball were not going to go anywhere.
Okay,
About the time I turned 16, I realized me and basketball weren't going anywhere either.
So let's switch over to our business. Were you a wrestling fan growing up?
I have been a wrestling fan, and I still am today since I was about 10 years old.
Okay.
I used to catch. Can you hang on just a second? Let me get rid of this scam call.
Must be a wrestling promoter.
They hung up.
Okay.
Those are the best ones when you actually answer it and they hang up.
Yeah.
So you were a fan growing up?
Yeah, we used to catch wrestling would come on Channel 2 here in Green Bay. I think it was probably 10, 11 o'clock on a Saturday night and 8, 9, 10 o'clock Sunday morning. And it used to come from the International Amphitheater in Chicago. Back when the old, I don't even remember who the promotion was. And it just looked like it was fun, so I started watching it. I was probably 10, 11 years old. And I just grew up watching wrestling. And then I graduated from high school, went in the Army, came home, and started watching again. While I was stationed in Japan, I didn't realize that American wrestlers were coming over there, and I was out with a bunch of buddies one night, and we ran into the Assassins at a nightclub.
Wow.
This was like 1966, 67, 66.
Wow.
Ran into the Assassins in the nightclub in Tokyo. And, I was telling them I knew this, I watched this and watched that. And they go, wow, well, glad you enjoy it. They were cordial, but kind of standoffish.
Sure.
So,
But
go ahead.
so, I've been a fan of wrestling my entire life.
So what made you decide to get into the business and make it a career?
Okay, and you're going to get a big kick out of this, Mick. I used to go to the shows at Milwaukee Auditorium and the Milwaukee Civic Center. Then an incident happened with a security guard there who pushed my wife back in her chair after they were all gone by. So because of that, I got to know Dennis Hilgard, and we became friends. And then one time, Dennis asked me, he says, which way do you go home when you go home? I said, I go to the south side. And he goes, can you give a couple of guys a ride to the airport? And I went, what? Huh?
Oh, boy.
So that started me getting into the dressing room area. That was my entrance into the dressing room area. I was the guy who would give rides to the wrestlers because they could trust me. They felt that they could trust me is what I believe. So anyway, and this is where the fun part comes in, Mick. You know who the mayor of Fridley, Minnesota is, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that guy. That guy.
He was in Milwaukee doing a show. He was on first or second, and he come back, and I just and the match he had, the guy he was working with was terrible. I mean, it was just a horrible match. And I told him, I says, Stan, I says, you look like you had a bit of a problem out there tonight. And he goes, yeah, I did. You think you can? You think you can do any better? Get your big ass in there and do it. So I got to thinking. So for about 2 or 3 months, the shows are coming in every 3 weeks. I started paying attention to what I was watching. And the more I watched and the more I paid attention, the more I'm talking to myself, I can do this. I can really do this. I think I could have fun. So for about a year and a half, I tried to find somebody that would train me. I wrote letters. I wrote Vern a letter. I wrote Billy Red Lions a letter. There was a guy out of Indianapolis, and I can't remember his name. I wrote him a letter. Vern replied back, I don't run a school. I only train friends or people I know on different occasions. So I'm not doing it. But in the meantime, I'm still hauling people around for Dennis Hilgard, taking them to the airport and whatever. And a couple of the kids that used to work for him, set up chairs and stuff like that, called me one day, I think it was 1971, and said, "Hey, you still want to be a wrestler?" And at the time, I was just about to give up on any chance of getting in the business. And I said, "Yeah, okay, you're booked for this show in Racine on July 20th, I think it was 1971. I said, "I don't have any training. We'll get you enough training to get you through the first match."
Wow.
Whoa.
I went, "What?" "Yeah, we'll get you trained enough to get through your first match." So July 20th shows up. I've got 4 hours of training under my belt, and I'm in the opening match on this. At the time, it was called an outlaw show.
Okay, sure.
Mm,
Yeah.
Okay.
So I get in there, and one of the guys that was on this show said, "Hey, there's matches at the Eagles Club in Milwaukee tomorrow." And I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, bring your stuff up, and if somebody doesn't show up, we'll tell them you're there and you can work, and if they don't show up, we'll get you in there." And I said, "Okay." He said, "You know where the Eagles Club is, right?" And I went, "Yeah, I can stand on my front porch and throw rocks at the back door." So So I go up there, and we had 3 or 4 guys in Milwaukee who done jobs on TV, went up to do TV. So they're on the card, and one guy didn't show up that was booked on the card, and I'll tell you who that was in a minute. So they go to the promoter and says, "We got this Indian kid that's pretty good. Why don't you put him in there?" And one of the guys says, "I'll work with him because I can work with him. We're okay." So he says, "Go get dressed." So we went in, we had the match. I come out, and some of the very same guys, these 3 or 4 guys out of Milwaukee that I had been pestering for a year and a half, says, "You'll be at the gym tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We'll start your training."
Wow.
I went, "Hold
Whoa.
it. And they said, "What's the matter?" I says, "What's this going to cost me?" We're not gonna charge you anything because we need to get guys for TV." And I went, "Oh, okay, I'll be there." That started
Wow.
it. That was the entrance into the building. The guys were that trained me were Amado Rodriguez, remember
Oh,
him?
of course.
Cesar Paban,
Caesar. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
a guy by the name of Bob Amell,
Baba Mel. Remember all these guys, of course.
and there was a couple others. There was a kid named Carlos and a kid named Juan, and those were the guys that started my initial training. And that's where it started, in a community center gym on South 10th no South 6th Street in Milwaukee, and
Wow.
I had a ball.
It's amazing to me, Frankie, because back as first of all, when Vern tells you he's not running a camp, was that BS, or was he really not running a camp at that time?
I think it was BS
Okay,
because he didn't say he wasn't running a camp. He said he doesn't run training camps,
gotcha.
Okay.
and I knew better. You know, I'm just crazy. I'm not stupid.
No, no.
Yeah, so you had the 4 hours of training, and I mean you obviously must have been like you were smartened up to what was going on during those 4 hours, right? I mean, you didn't go in and they were trying to shoot on you or work you over or anything.
Nope. The guy that I got in the ring with for that first match is a dude out of Chicago or down southern Wisconsin. His name is Bob Capel.
Bob Capel. Oh God.
So
The-
go ahead.
Go
Matt.
ahead, Chris. I was going to
just-
say these guys don't remember the Bob Capels of the world, but I mean, you're taking me back, buddy. Bob Capel, he wrestled barefoot for
Yep.
Vern on TV, and they billed him out of Vienna, Austria.
Yeah.
Oh man. Go
Okay.
ahead, Chris.
Sorry, real quick, Frankie. So you had teased earlier about somebody not showing up, and you were going to mention who that was. I apologize if I missed it, but I need the payoff here.
You didn't miss it. I didn't tell you yet.
Well, that's what
The
I
guy
figured.
Ah,
Who
The guy
was?
that didn't show up for that Eagles Club match went on to become, like me, very successful in the business. The guy's name was Paul Pershman.
Oh
Ah,
my God.
oh, oh,
Oh.
wow.
oh. I love how we all had the same reaction on that. Like
Yep. you
that
sure
was
did.
Dave.
Yeah.
Now that's a payoff. Are you happy with the payoff there, Joe?
I am all 217 pounds of Bloody Rose.
That's right. So what were your early days in the business like? Like, okay, so you had the 4 hours of training, you worked the one show, then you worked, another one at the Eagles Club the next day. You actually start your training like the morning after your second match, from what I understand. And then like what is the beginning of your training and like actually going out and working some of these matches? What's that like?
Number one, it was kind of scary. Number two, it was very exciting. And I think I trained for I'm going to say about 3 months. Then they had a festival in Wisconsin that they had booked wrestling through the guys that were training me. So they put me on that. And then we worked another few independent shows around southern Wisconsin. Then it was December 6th, I believe. Well, it was probably about 3 or 4 days before. Rodriguez Amato calls me on the phone. And he says, "What are you doing this Saturday?" And I says, "Nothing, not really." He goes, "Okay, get your bag packed. We're gonna go do TV." I went, "We're gonna do what?" He said, "We're gonna go do TV in Minneapolis." And I said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, you're ready."
Wow.
So I get up there and go into the dressing room, and I stand by the door because I'm not I don't really know the protocols of the business yet, but I'm smart enough to not go grab somebody's chair. So I stood by the door, and I forget who it was come in and says, "Come on, sit over here by me." It was one of the names at the time, and so Wally comes in, and Amato introduced me to Wally, and then about 2 or 3 seconds later, Vern's right behind him, and Vern sticks out his hand. And he goes, "Hi, what's your name?" So I told him. He said, "Yeah, I wrote you a letter about not getting in the business and stay out, and I wasn't training." He said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I didn't listen." I said, "And these guys trained me." He said, "Okay, we'll see how good you are." So that was my introduction to Vern, and he remembered writing me a letter and telling me,
Wow.
"Don't get in the business." Of course, some of us are hard headed and don't listen. We're kind of deaf at times.
That's such a great story. And the fact that Vern reached out to you and remembered you
Yep.
is fantastic. We're talking about those early AWA days, Frankie. And I remember, as a fan, taking those road trips to Milwaukee and Chicago and Green Bay. When you're doing it, when you're in the car with some of these guys, some of the guys that had been in the business for a long time, did you pick their brains on those road trips? Was it a learning experience? I've heard, a lot of wrestlers say over the years, "Yeah, I rode with so and so, and that was the best training, mentally I could ever have, is just asking the questions and listening to the pros."
Let me explain to you what happened to me. And I to this day I don't know what caused it. I'm there and I'm going to TV for like 2 or 3 years. once a month I go do TV. And all of a sudden I get a phone call from Wally Carbo. Frankie, can you get 3 or 4 guys to come up and do TV? And I went, what about Rodriguez? And that goes, he goes, well, we kind of want to mix it up a little bit. He says, we don't need too many Puerto Rican guys up here all the time. He says, and I know you've been working out with some of the guys from around Milwaukee there that aren't Puerto Rican. We want you to put them together and bring them up here. So I'm going, okay. And I'm still trying to figure out, why is he calling me to do this? So this went on for 2 or 3, like I said, it was 2 or 3 years, and then this started happening. Then I go up to do TV one time, and Wally goes, Frankie, can you stay overnight? We need you to work tomorrow at the Civic Center here. I said, yeah, okay. But in the meantime, in Milwaukee, I'm giving guys rides to the airport, and I don't say nothing. They ask me a question, I'll answer it.
Okay.
But I don't ask questions because I don't want to appear like I'm a dumb shit.
There you go. Yep.
But I would listen, and I'd get little things like, hey, seen part of your match the other night. You need to stop doing this, or you need to try this, or you need to modify this a little bit, and I would say, okay, I'll try it. Then went to do TV one time, and I forgot what I'd done, and I come out, and Nick and Ray were standing in the dressing room door. And Nick goes, come here. Sit down. He says, da-da-da-da-da-da. He goes over the whole match. From the second I left the dressing room till I came back through that door, went over the entire scenario. And Ray is sitting next to him. So he says, I'm going to watch every match you're in from now on, and we're going to work with you.
Oh my God.
Now,
Boy.
here's what happened. They were my primary go-to guys, mentors. But everybody in the AWA at the time took an interest in me. To this day, Mick and Chris, I don't know why. Evidently, they figured maybe we can get something out of this guy. So
I know. Well, yeah.
everybody would. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Frank. I know when I'd first kind of talked to you, and we were just kind of chatting it up and just kind of going over some things to make sure it was all gonna work out. You told me that story, and I was gonna hold on to that, and I knew I wanted to see Mick and Joe's reaction during that show because I heard that and my mouth just dropped, because out of all of the guys that could take an interest, Ray Stevens, Nick Bockwinkel, and then for them to say, you're going to be our guy, and then the entire locker room to kind of get behind you, it's just, it's the sort of thing that is just kind of like so out of the realm of reality for me to even think about, to have guys like that are looking at you saying, we think you got something.
Yeah. And what over time, up until from like 73, 74, maybe 75 to 79, when I left AWA, it was constant. Guys would drop by and say, hey, look good, do this, don't do that, try this, try that, don't do this, don't do that. And it was everybody in the locker room.
Amazing.
And now, 10 years down the road, I sat and I thought, what happened?
Yeah.
Why this big interest in this fat frickin' Indian kid from Wisconsin? So I would periodically sit, and I still do this today, and go back over things, remember, reminisce, try in my mind to figure out why certain things happened. So anyway, that went on. The upshot of that is I left AWA. I went to this little promotion in North Florida that was going nowhere, and I was starving. And I called Wally and I said, "Hey, I got to get out of here. I'm not making any money. I'm barely surviving." He said, "Okay, come on home." I got home. He said, "You're going to Kansas." They were going to send me. They said, "You're going to go to Kansas City." But when I first started to leave, they were going to send me to Vancouver to work for a guy named Al Tomko.
Oh yeah.
So I'm 3 days away from leaving for Vancouver, and I get a phone call from Vern, not Wally, Vern. He says, "Frankie, you're not going to Vancouver." I said, "Vern, then I got to find someplace else to go." He says, "I'll get you someplace. Don't worry about it. But you're not going to Tom. You're not going to go work for Tomko." I went, "Okay." I said, "You're the boss. I'm not going to Vancouver." That's when I went to North Florida, go stay there. Then I went to Kansas City. Now you have to realize, in this period of time that I was up in AWA, I was also going to St. Louis. I was going to Kansas City. I was going to Indianapolis. And I had a bunch of guys that tagged along with me. We'd go do TV, all these places. So, and I didn't realize what was happening is I was being trained kind of surreptitiously, I guess is a good word for it, by the office in Minneapolis to do something. I was told later by a man who ended up being a really good friend of mine for a long time until he passed away, that when I was sent to Kansas City, Vern called the office down there, Bob Geigel, Pat O'Connor,
Yeah.
and said, "We're going to send you Frankie Hill down there, and we want you to make a star out of him." Of course, Geigel says, "We've been beating this guy on TV for 2-3 years." Vern says, "Make a star out of him." And that was the end of that. So I go to Kansas City. It worked me up to where I'm up on the card. And the booker at the time was a guy who was really not well liked in the business, who's passed away. His name was Bob Sweetan. So anyway, I got down there. They pushed me a little bit, and they got a new booker in, and I had heard some things, and I figured, well, my tenure here is pretty much over. So they said, "Can you do a show in California?" I went, "Sure." So I go to California. They asked me to stay there. I stayed there. So that's how part of that went.
You know, first of all, I'm fascinated because how lucky you were that initially, for whatever reason, whatever it was, your loyalty, that you, maybe it was the fact that they could trust you, they saw the athletic ability, they saw you're taking to the business, whatever it was. Guys like Nick and Ray took an interest in you, and that's pretty amazing considering all the guys that came in around that time from Milwaukee and from Chicago and whatever, strictly to do jobs on TV, and yet they focus on you. You had something that they really saw in you, and I think that's what do you think it was, Frankie? Before we move on to the later stages of the career, personally, what do you think it was that attracted you to them? I mean, it was a pretty amazing story.
I think what they seen was a desire to be a wrestler, number one. Number two, it was being humble and realizing that I had to earn every inch I gained in the AWA. And I realized that, this is something that you don't just walk into and become the greatest thing since crunchy peanut butter. you have to earn every
Right.
step of the way, every inch. You have to earn it, and you do that by number one, earning the respect of the people above you. And there's so much psychology and philosophy about the business that people were never taught. Well, I got it pounded into me very nicely. I was taught by the best. And if you look at the AWA, almost the best wrestlers in the business in the 70s, 80s, and 90s came out of Minneapolis.
Absolutely. And particularly the era that you were in, and we're gonna put up some pictures of the guys that you worked with, and get your thoughts on them in just a second. But so here it is. It's kind of fast forward here. We got Frankie Hill, veteran guy. He's making the rounds all around the country, and on television, and all of a sudden, here this guy shows up, and he's at Madison Square Garden. He's working for the World Wrestling Federation, and he's one of the Strongbow brothers,
Yep.
along with Jay Strongbow. How in the hell did that happen? Was this something that was planned for a long time, or just out of the blue?
Okay, I'm gonna give you that. And that picture you got up was taken at Kansas City Auditorium in 1979. Anyway, here's what happened. So I go to California, like I told you, and it was New Year's Day, 1980, and I was living in a hotel in downtown LA. It was not much more than a flop house, but it was cheap. I was living there. I was close to the buildings, and I could get in and out. So anyway, I'm sitting there New Year's Day watching whatever was on TV, parade or some shit, and my phone rings, and it's Mike LaBelle. And I answered the phone, and he goes, "Hey, Frankie, it's Mike LaBelle." And I went, "Oh, hi. Happy New Year." He goes, "You busy?" And I went, "No, I'm just sitting here watching the idiot box." He goes, "Grab a pencil and paper." And I go, "Okay." I figured he was going to tell me, something about bookings being changed or whatever.
Sure, sure.
He said, "Write this phone number down." So I said, "Okay." So I write the phone number down. I got it. He goes, "Now, when you hang up talking to me, you call this number because the man on the other end is waiting to talk to you." I went, "Okay. And who am I talking to?" And he goes, "You're going to be talking to Vince McMahon Sr." And I went, "Do what?"
Hmm.
He goes, "You're going to be talking to Vince McMahon Sr." I went, "Okay." He says, "Then you call me back and you get done talking to him and let me know what's going on." I said, "Yes, sir." You know, one thing I learned very early in the business: be respectful,
Yes, of course.
which is something I've been all my life anyway. So I wasn't doing anything I didn't already do. So I hang up the phone. I dial the number. It rings once. I hear I hear the phone pick up, and the next words I hear was, "Hi, Frankie, Vince McMahon here."
Oh my
I went,
God.
"Yes,
Oh,
sir."
wow.
He went, "Yeah, I've been waiting for your call. I told Mike to have you call me right away." So he said, "Listen, you're going to be coming to New York." He says, "Now don't get all excited because it's not going to happen right now." He says, "I just got rid of one Indian, and I'll never have that MFer back in my territory again if I can get away with it."
Huh.
So right off the bat, I learned that there's something wrong between Vince McMahon Sr. and Joe Scarpa.
Ah,
So anyway, and I'll tell you what I found out later on. He says, "This is going to be a couple years down the road." He said, "Then when I bring you in," he said, "I'm going to do something with you that has never been done in the business before." And I went, "Yes, sir." He says, "So for the next till I call you to tell you you're coming in, I want a phone call from you every 4 to 6 weeks, like a month to a month and a half. I want to know where you are. I want to know how you're being treated. I want to know what you're being paid. And if there's a problem, I'll take care of it. I went, yes, sir.
Wow.
So I called Mike LaBelle back after I finished talking to Vince, and he goes, good job, good job. You done exactly what you should have. And I went, that's the way I am all the time, Mike. You know that.
Wow.
So that's what took place. So now, 2 years down the road, I get the phone call because I'd moved to Oklahoma. And there was some guy that came out of Charlotte to Oklahoma with George Scott. They changed bookers in Oklahoma. So the second day George Scott was on there, I walked into the office and I said, Mr. Scott, I said, I just want to know, do I need to find another place to go? Or are you going to keep me here? I'd like to know so I can prepare for what's coming down the road. He said, number one, you're staying here. He said, number two, we're going to make some money. So here's some of the guys that came in. Paul Jones, Jimmy Snuka, Swede Hansen, George, I can't think of his last name. Anyway, so we set the Oklahoma territory on fire. I mean, we were selling out everything. We were selling out toilets, hot dog stands. We were selling out everything. And it was me and Snook on top. Neither one of us carrying a belt, but we were the draw.
Are you healing at this time, or are you babyface?
Nah, Vern wouldn't let me be a heel.
Okay.
So were you still Frankie Hill at this point, or had you transitioned? Yep. You're still Frankie Hill?
Nope, I was still Frankie Hill. I didn't change names until I went to New York. So anyway, this goes on, and finally I get the phone call, and they were going to close the Oklahoma territory on, say, January 31st. No, March 31st. They're closing Oklahoma territory because Dorothy and them had sold it back to Bill Watts. So anyway, George Scott calls me. He says, I got you booked in New York. And I went, oh, really? I played it on through because he wasn't aware that I was waiting for a phone call from Vince McMahon Sr. to come there anyway. So I let him have his moment of glory. I get up to New York, and I'm at the Allentown airport. And no, I'm in Atlanta, and I see Jay Strongbow. So I walk over and I says, hi, Jay. Who are you? Who told you? I said, no. I said, hi, Joe. And he goes, I went to introduce myself. He said, who told you you could call me Joe? Who do you think you are? I said, well, sorry I bothered you. Turned around and walked away. So I go get my stuff when I get to Allentown and go pick up my baggage. I head out. Knew where I had to go. So I grab a cab, and I'm putting my suitcase in the bag. And, hey, can I ride with you? It was Jay. And I said, why? Well, we're going to the same place. Figured maybe we could just share a ride. I went, okay. So we get to the fairgrounds where they done TV. This is the first TV. And I walked through the door, and you could hear Snuka and Swede Hansen from across the building scream. And it was, you're finally here. We had word you were coming. We knew, blah, blah, blah. So Jay didn't know what to do because all these guys knew who I was. So Jimmy comes over, grabs me. He goes, have you met Mr. McMahon yet? And I went, no, I just walked through the door, Jimmy. He goes, come on, I'll introduce you. So he takes me to the office and he knocks on the door, and Vince Sr. goes, come on in. So he goes, Jimmy walks in, he goes, Vince, he says, I brought Frankie and I'd like to introduce you. This is Frankie Hill. And I said, hi, Mr. McMahon. I said, thank you for bringing me in. And Snuka says, Vince, this guy is so over in Oklahoma, he could commit murder on the Capitol steps and they'd pin a medal on him for it. Vince looked at Jimmy. He goes, Jimmy, why do you think he's here?
Oh. Wow.
So
Oh.
that was my entrance into New York. And then we had this will cut out in a second. We had Vince had a talk with me about what was going on. And what the heck is that?
It's Vince McMahon Jr. calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the upshot of it was that Jay was starting to work with Killer Kowalski out of Boston running shows. And Vince apologized to me, told me what was going on. He says I had to put a stop to it, so I had to bring him in. So we had to change what we were doing for a little bit. I went, okay, I understand. What I figured out later, and this is probably 5, 6, 7 years down the road after that, maybe not that long, and I'm probably wishful thinking, was it was getting towards the end of Backlund's run. And I really believed that Vince was going to put that belt on me. And I might be wrong. But when I think back and he says, I'm going to do something with you that's never been done in this business before. That's the only thing I could come up with.
Sure.
So anyway, fast forward down the road, Ray Stevens comes in to work with Backlund.
Sure.
And this is my crowning moment. This is the highlight of my career. Get to the Madison Square Garden. Vince Sr. says, you're working with Ray tonight?
Oh.
You guys have a good match. So what do you think I did? Here's what I did. I went to Ray and I laid it in his lap. I said, Ray, I'm working with you tonight. I said, I want to have a really good match. I said, I don't want to be an embarrassment to you. I don't want to be an embarrassment to Nick. I don't want to be an embarrassment to the rest of the guys in Minneapolis. I said, I want you to tell me what we're going to do in this match so that I don't look like some job boy coming in to work with you. He looked up at me and he said, this is Ray's exact words, and I will never forget this. Ray looked at me and he says, Frankie, we're going to steal the show.
Oh, my God. Wow.
We go out there. Ray and I are tearing the walls down. The roof left the building. We get back. Ray and I are sitting in the dressing room going over the match, like always. The door opens a crack, and Vince McMahon sticks his head in the door. Vince McMahon Sr. says, I want to talk to you two. Ray looks at me, smiles, and I figured, oh, shit. What'd I do now? Vince McMahon Sr. says, gets us out and walks us down to the end of the hallway, and he goes, what do you hear? Ray goes, what? He says, what do you hear? Ray goes, not much, pretty quiet. He goes, exactly. Those people out there sitting on their hands, they're going to the shit house, they're going to the hot dog stand, they're buying popcorn, and the world's champion is in the ring. What don't you hear? Ray says, I don't hear nothing. He goes, exactly. You guys went out there, and now he's got to go out there and work after you.
Oh,
He goes,
man.
he goes, from now on, either in singles or you two working together, you don't go on before the world's champion.
Unreal.
Wow.
Boy,
He
what
says,
what a testimony to how good you were.
and
Damn.
he goes, no more. The champion's on the card, you go on after him. Both of you. And if you're working together, you don't go on until the last match of the night.
Oh, that is just fantastic. Just fantastic. And
And let me finish this story.
yeah, absolutely.
This is the cutting line. Vince goes, the world champion's out there working, and there's no response. Ray looked up at him, and this is the crowning moment of everything that happened that night. Ray looked up at Vince Sr. and he goes, maybe he shouldn't be champion then.
Wow.
And Vince Sr. looked at Ray, smiled, turned around and walked out the door. That was the crowning moment of my career in that ring.
What a terrific story. And to think that it came full circle too, that the crowning moment of your career has to do with Ray Stevens, who
Yep.
was back in the day, it was Nick and Ray, watching you. That is just, I love stories like that. It's old school stuff, and wow, thank you for sharing that. That is great.
That's that's it. In my way, that is me honoring both of those guys that match.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know what they seen in me, what they wanted out of me, but apparently they brought it out. And I had heard stories over the years about other people going to the office and pitching a bitch, not really pitching a bitch, but putting the word in for me. One of the guys that I found out much later was Crusher.
Oh,
This is the story I had heard that Crusher would go in the office and tell Vernon Wally, you need to push this kid. You need to push this kid. This kid's going to draw money. You need to push this kid. And Vern told him at one time, he says, we beat him on TV. He's been here for 5 years. All we've done is beat him on TV, beat him on TV. Crusher looked at him and says, put him over on TV once, they'll forget everything that's happened.
yeah.
Said,
That makes sense.
Yeah. And
Man,
I thought about it, over the years. And I'll tell you another story in a minute. If they had put me in there with the right guy, and I'll tell you who the right guy would have been, and put me over on TV, they'd have forgot every match I ever got. The whole world would have forgot every match I was ever beat in up to that point. If they had put me in there with Larry Hennig and put me over, it would have been a whole different show.
why Larry?
Because Larry went to Carbo at one point and and I was standing in the dressing room. He says, Larry goes, who am I working with? And Wally says, you're working with so-and-so. He said, no, I'm not. What do you mean? Larry said, I'm working with Frankie. Wally says, you just worked with him 6 weeks ago. Not even that long. Why do you want to work with him? Because he knows what he's doing.
Oh,
Oh, wow. He says, if I ain't working with Frankie, I'm going home. Wally said, well, you ain't working with Frankie today. Larry reached down, grabbed his bag, and started for the door. Wally goes, come back. You can work with him. So
My God.
Larry wouldn't work with anybody on TV but me. Now, if I had beat him on TV, that would have changed everything, because here he'd been beating me, and all of a sudden, boom,
Sure.
I beat him.
I'm listening to you talk here, and I'm just blown away. not only because you came in as an unknown, you're some kid who wants to get involved in wrestling. You don't have a lot of training, and yet the Bockwinkles and Stevens and Larry Hennings of the world are on. They're in your corner.
Yep.
Wow. Well, that's
only,
testimony to you, buddy.
Not only them, Vern, Greg, Jim Brunzell, Billy Robinson, all of these guys would stop and say, do this, don't do that, try this, try that. That don't look good, you doing it. You don't need to do that. That's not you.
Man.
Wow.
You know, and it was an entire territory said, come here, we're gonna build you. And I'll tell you, when I finally realized that I was one of the boys, it was a colder than hell February 20th night in Duluth, Minnesota.
Oh boy.
I was first or second match on the card against a guy named Blackjack Lanza. He goes, this is what we're going to do, Frankie. I went, yes, sir. And he goes, 2 flying mares and then backslide me. I went, okay. So we do that. Flying mare, I backslide him, 1, 2, 3, and I turn green. I won the match. I figured something went wrong. I don't win matches. So I go backstage, and I'm walking around backstage. There was the dressing room was off the stage and behind the curtain, and I'm walking around out there trying to figure out what I'd done during the match that caused this accident to happen. And Greg comes out and he goes, hey, Frankie, that's a hell of a match. You've done really great out there. And I looked at him. He goes, what's the matter? And I says, Blackjack just put me over in the middle of the ring. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's what was supposed to happen. Didn't anybody tell you? Nobody said a thing to me about this. Oh, he goes, oh, yeah, that was the way it was supposed to be from the start. He goes, you were supposed to win all the time. I said, oh, it'd been nice if somebody had told me. He started laughing. He goes, well, I guess you're one of the boys now, aren't you?
Oh, that is just tremendous. That is fantastic. So was it Jack's idea to put you over, or was it the office?
I don't know. To this day, I have no idea.
Did you think that the referee made a mistake and shouldn't have counted to 3, or what was going through your head?
I all I knew was something wasn't right.
Oh, that is
something did not make sense.
Well, they obviously saw something in you at that point. I mean, you know, all credit is deserved to you for not only how you handled yourself in the business, but them putting you over without you knowing that you're going over. There's something special to that, Frankie.
That's what you call a high class rib.
Good kind of rib.
Oh, That is sweet. Chris, are we going into week 2?
Yeah, let's go into some word association here, Mick. I know that
okay.
you've got some names. I'll throw up some pictures, and then the three of you just kind of chop it up, and then I know that we've got some things that you guys want to take it home with. So I'm gonna step back, let you guys do the word association. I'll put the pictures, and we'll just keep rolling. This is good. I'm loving it. I'm loving this.
That sounds great. I'm just. I'm a kid in a candy store again, Frankie, when I get one of the old AWA vets on here, reliving those memories. What we're going to do right now, we're going to put up some pictures and, just a couple of memories of the, from you about the guys that you worked with back in the day in the AWA, just to take a memory, whatever. So
Okay.
Let's kick it off. And Chris, I think, is ready with talk about your relationship with Wally Carbo.
I had a great relationship with Wally. And I think it was because he was the boss. I was just doing what the boss asked me to do. He'd call me and say, I need 4 guys for TV. Can you get up here? Yeah. Okay, we'll be there. And we had a great relationship. Me and Dick Reynolds worked at a Milwaukee show, and Wally goes, hey, what you doing after the show's over? And going home? He says, how about you and Dick Reynolds come with me and the Crusher? We're going to go get something to eat. I went, okay.
Wow.
But that's the kind of rapport I had with Wally, I wasn't afraid of him.
Right.
I had a lot of respect for him. He was the guy signing the paycheck. So if he's the boss, he's the boss. You treat him accordingly.
That's great. And to hear you talk about Dick Reynolds, the Wilbur Snyder lookalike, by the way.
Yeah, Wilbur Snyder's doppelganger.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked extensively about Vern and then, Billy Robinson. What was your relationship primarily with Vern as the big honcho? And then also, what about your interactions with Billy Robinson?
I don't really have anything bad to say about Vern. He would tell me, we need you to do this or we need you to do that, and I would just go do it.
Yeah.
He probably could have told me to go shoot 3 fans in the front row, and I'd have found a gun someplace. But and I got to work with him once on TV, and he put an Indian deathlock on me, and I got out of it. I done something and I got out of it, and he just looked at me like, what the hell? Just one of the things. And I didn't have much interaction with Billy Robinson, other than he would tell me, good match, don't do this, or good match, try that.
Did you work with Billy in the ring at all?
Never.
Okay, interesting.
Never.
Wow. Huh. I love that story about you getting out of the Indian deathlock, because I remember a guy that was coming in to do TV jobs, Hugo Babich.
Yep.
And Hugo came in and he wrestled Vern on TV one time. And I just remember, I don't remember what the move was, but Hugo fucked something up. And Vern proceeded to slap the living shit out of the guy. And he never worked in the AWA again. So when you tell me you got out of an Indian deathlock and Vern was cool with it, that's respect, buddy. That is that really says something.
But it was the way he set himself, and I seen an opening, and I took it.
As you should. Hey,
at that point it was. What do I do now? Oh, he done that. Now I'm gonna capitalize on it. And I expected to catch holy hell about it and didn't.
Yeah, hey, you're one of the few, buddy. Let's go on to these two gentlemen, and we talked extensively about these two, Frankie. But to me, you know how biased I am.
Yep.
But in the annals of the business, does it get any better than Nick Bockwinkel and Ray Stevens?
No, absolutely not. There is nobody in the business in the past 80 years that can compare to these two gentlemen.
That says it all.
Still there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that says it all, and
I became friends with people like Pat O'Connor. I became good friends with a guy by the name of Lou Thez.
oh God.
And Lou worked out of Kansas City for a while, and he come and got me. He called me one day. He said, "Frankie, are you in such and such town?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "You want to ride with me?"
Oh my God.
And I went, "Sure, I'll ride with you." Now, here's probably one of the premier world champions in the business saying,
Absolutely.
"Hey, you want to ride with me?" And I went, "Damn." In my mind, I'm going, "Holy cow, Lou Thez asking me if I want to ride with him." And when I first went to Kansas City, went to the office, checked in, and I said, "I hear there's a hotel down the street where the guys stay, that's pretty cheap." Pat O'Connor goes, "Frankie, I got an apartment over in Riverside, got 2 bedrooms. Why don't you come stay with me?"
Oh,
I went, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, come stay with me." And I'm thinking to myself, what the? So I said, "Okay." I said, I get over there and I says, what's my portion of the rent going to be? He says, "You help me keep the place clean." He says, "Pay for your long distance phone calls and we'll call it square."
Wow.
unreal. Pat O'Connor, Lou Thez,
Yep.
Vern Gagne, Nick Bockwinkel, Ray Stevens. Good Lord. I mean, man, wow.
That's a who's list of that era.
Absolutely. The greatest ever. We're moving ahead here. Did you ever have a chance to work with this gentleman, superstar Billy Graham?
I might have, but I don't recall if I ever did.
Okay. Okay. I know that Billy was in 73, 74-ish
Yeah.
in the AWA. Didn't know if you
No,
had crossed paths with him or not.
I don't remember if I ever worked with him in Minneapolis or not. I didn't work with him in New York for sure.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because when he came back with that karate gimmick and
Oh, yeah. Karate gimmick, that was not Billy Graham. I mean, that should not have
No.
been Billy Graham.
no.
Well,
this
this is the guy with the karate gimmick. I'm kidding.
this is
Sure.
this is Joe's all-time favorite wrestler right up there, the Crusher. Memories of Crush.
I was working. I was asked to stay over in Minneapolis to work an after or an evening show, late afternoon evening show at the Minneapolis Civic Center. Crusher was on the card. I worked with a guy named Khosrow Vaziri on that card.
Oh, uh-huh.
Khosrow gave me an elbow in the eye, gave me a black eye,
Oh, God.
opened me up underneath the eyeball. I get done with my match, and I'm figuring, well, I'll wait till tomorrow, I'll catch a plane home. Crusher gets out of it. He says, "Hurry up, get dressed." I went, "What?" He says, "Come on." He says, "We can make the such and such plane back to Milwaukee." I went, "Okay."
Wow.
You're the boss. So Crusher says, "Come on, Frankie, we can do it. We can catch this plane back." So it was little things like that, where the guys who had no reason to look at an undercard worker at the time had no reason to pay any attention to me. But little things like that. You know?
Wow.
Yeah. This is so great to hear this, and it's testimony again to you, your dedication to the business. This guy right here, Paul Perchman, told me that Larry Heineme, aka Lars Anderson, basically brutalized him in training camp. Did you have any association work with I think he was Larry Heineme at the time, might have flipped over to Lars Anderson, but did you work with this guy?
Him and I were tag team partners.
Wow, where?
They shot an angle where, and we worked with Nick and Ray, where they turned him babyface, and something happened. But the thing was with Nick and Ray and him, and he needed a tag team partner. So he was gonna take ostensibly one of the worst wrestlers in the business for his tag team partner, i.e., me. So we done the Green Bay Brown County Arena, and we done the International Amphitheater in Chicago, and we were tag team partners. I never worked.
Did you ever work with them on TV? Did they? Because
Nope.
I mean, I'm floored by this. I had no idea.
Yeah, no, I never worked with him on TV.
Wow, boy, that's something.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. Little. And I love that, ostensibly one of the worst guys in the business. That is so good. I'm thinking back, Larry Hennig did the same thing with Paul Pershman at one point. If I got to have a tag team partner, let it be this guy.
Crusher done the same thing with George Gadowski.
With George, of course. Absolutely. Oh my God. Great stuff. Here's a photograph. Larry Hennig, Jumpin' Jimmy Brunzell, and Baron von Raschke.
AKA George Clooney.
George Clooney, yeah. Well, he's better looking than George Clooney, though. I mean, you got to admit that.
Only on Tuesday.
Did you get a chance to work with Baron at all?
Nope.
Oh,
and I wanted to. I think we'd have had a ball.
One of the nicest guys in the business
ever.
Yeah, Baron von Raschke. And we've talked so many times on this show. How does a guy who's as a sweetheart of a guy as this, at one time become one of the most despised heels in the wrestling business? That is some real talent. Oh my God. Okay, we got some more pictures, Chris, to run past Frankie. Oh, jeez, there's Bob Remus, aka the Sarge. Was he in the territory here in the AWA, or did you work with him at Kansas City? Have a chance to interact with him?
We became really good friends. We still are. I haven't talked to him in a while, but we became good friends. I was living in Connecticut, working out of Connecticut. I'll tell you a quick story. And him and I would travel together. And he had, how's your family? Everybody doing? I said, well, my wife's pregnant, and we're expecting and stuff like that. And he goes, oh, he says, I'll give you my phone number. He said, you give it to your wife. If something happens and you're not home and she needs to get to the hospital, you tell her to call my house and somebody will get there to get to her. That's how me and the Sarge got along. And then we worked independent shows around the East Coast for a long time together. And tell you a funny story. I was in the Army Reserves. We go to Fort Gordon, Georgia to do summer camp. So I called Wally and I said, is there any way you can get me hooked up with the Atlanta office to go do TV while I'm down there? Because I'll be off on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, let me call. So he calls Ole. And Ole says, yeah. So I go down to TV and we get down there on Saturday. On Monday, I have to go to Augusta because they're running a show to get the directions of how to get to the studio in Atlanta for TV. And I get out of the car, I swing my legs out of the car and I turn around and the first thing I hear is, hey, Frankie. It was the Sarge under the Super Destroyer Mark II or whatever
Mark II. Oh, yeah. Wow.
And he says, don't turn around. Just go in the building. I'll meet you in there. So
You know,
I worked with him that night in the Battle Royal in the singles match.
was he in New York when you got the big break? Was he healing at the Garden?
No,
Okay,
He was in Atlanta, I think, and then
okay.
but he came in after me. Yeah.
One of the only masked men in history that you could recognize just by how far the chin stuck out.
Amen.
Oh, great guys. There's another guy. You mentioned him earlier on, Paul Perchman, aka Playboy Buddy Rose. And I remember the first couple of years, well, the first time he went out to training camp. He didn't make it for whatever reason. It just was not in the cards. But he was
I
tough
can tell
enough.
you why he didn't make it.
Oh,
he was
please
lazy.
do.
He was
Really?
lazy. Yeah. Don't do any more than what you absolutely have to get by.
Wow. Well, see, I never heard that.
Hell of a
from
guy,
him.
though.
Yeah, I think he told me he was injured, and that's why he did, had to come back a second time. But I'll take your version of the story, no question about it. And again, a guy who knew, who knew that this skinny kid out of Bloomington, Minnesota, was going to eventually be Playboy Buddy Rose. That's just amazing. Okay, let's get another shot up here. We're trying to stay in the era, and there you talked earlier about Stan Kowalski and then Ivan Koloff as well. Did you work with Ivan?
Yes.
Talk about him, please.
I worked with Ivan probably 1, 2, 3, 4 times in New York leading up to his match with Backlund.
Okay.
And we got after the first, it was Glens Falls, New York. We get back to the dressing room, and Ivan goes and sits down, and somebody says, "What's the matter, Ivan?" He goes, "That goddamn kid blew me up."
Oh, jeez.
And somebody said, "Frankie blew you up?" He won't let that happen. He says, "I called a spot and it was boom, 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 and he was right there." He says, "So I called another one, boom, 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 he was right there." He says, "I called 3, 4 spots and this kid's getting faster all the time. It blew me up." Yeah, it was fun working with Ivan.
As we're talking here, I remember I did work with you and Ivan when Rob Russin did the promotion at I think it was Treasure Island. In Florida. Came in 1990, I believe. And Ivan was there. One of the nicest guys ever in the business.
Yeah, very, very nice.
Okay, let's. I have. I've been told by Chris that we don't have a photograph of this next guy, but I want to ask you about. Well, let's go to this guy first. At that point, the 280-pound Ric Flair. Who was in, of course, coming out of Vern's training camp in the early 1970s. Another guy, at the time, would you have envisioned the greatness that Flair attained in the business?
No, and I really don't think anybody did until he got to North Carolina and started making waves.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a story. They were having a championship tournament in world class down in San Antonio. And one of the first 2 or 3 matches to go on as part of this tournament was me against Ric Flair. So they came and told me, "We need about 12 to 15 minutes. I went, "Okay, no problem." So they come back about 5 minutes. "We only need about 8 minutes. So I go tell Rick, I said, "They only want us to go about 8 minutes. He looked up at me, he says, "We'll go when we get ready. We're from Minneapolis."
Oh my, wow. Oh, I love hearing that.
We go to the ring, and Rick and I stood nose to nose for 5 minutes and blew the roof off the building, hadn't even touched each other.
Oh, God.
18 minutes, Rick says, "Let's go home." I get back to the dressing room, they come jump on my ass. "We told you 8 minutes." I said, "You go talk to Flair. He's the world champion. He's the one that called the match."
They gave you heat?
Yeah.
Oh,
So Ken Mantell, who's the lead booker at the time, he goes over. He says, "What happened? We told you 8 minutes." Rick looked up and he says, "I'll go when I get ready."
wow. Man.
That's all he said.
Oh, what a great story.
But I worked with Rick probably 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
It's always fun. It was
Was
always
that
fun.
in AWA? Did you work with him early on?
No, it was
Okay.
world class. I worked with him someplace else. World class. I think I worked with him twice in world class. A lot of fun, easy. Just
Night off, huh?
oh yeah.
Well, that's great. All right, I guess we have a picture. Chris grabbed one. I want to ask your opinion on the next guy that we're going to be putting up here whenever Chris is ready. Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Greatest
I,
mouth ever. The greatest
oh,
mouth ever to pick up a microphone.
we've talked many times on this show, Frankie, that in a lot of ways we see Bobby as the best overall performer in wrestling, whether it's managing, he could take bumps like nobody's business. And then the broadcasting, the talking. Did you have any interaction with Bobby over the years?
Only one time. I worked with Nick on TV in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And Bobby come to me, and this is when I should have realized it and wasn't smart enough to see my way out of the closet, so to speak. Blind in one eye, can't see out of the other.
Gotcha.
And Heenan come to me and he goes, "Frankie," he goes, "at the end of the match, when we turn our face towards the camera, you drop kick us and we'll take a bump out of the ring." I went, okay. I don't know why, but I'm going to drop kick them and they're going to take a bump. So I did it, and he come back and he goes, "Frankie, just got to touch us and we'll take off for you. You don't have to get so strong." I said, "Got you, boss."
Well, you wanted to make sure you made contact, Frankie.
Yeah.
Certainly understand that. I'm really amazed that you only worked with Bobby the one time in all those years. That's very, very interesting, and I love the story. This is the guy that I wanted to ask you about, Wahoo McDaniel. I know that you teamed up with Wahoo. Of course, probably the most famous of the Indian wrestlers over the years. Talk about Wahoo.
That might be your take on it. I'm the most famous.
Well, look, how about that?
Okay.
One of the most famous. Talk about Wahoo, if you will.
Okay. My first interaction really with Wahoo was in November of 1979. We were put on a tag team tournament in Japan. He was my tag team partner. And everybody had this misconception that you had to be really stiff with the Japanese boys. He was one of them, but he was my tag team partner for 2 weeks on this tag team tournament. And I'm going to tell you a story that I was told. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm going to tell you what I was told.
Okay.
I was told that Vern and Wally went to Wahoo and said, "Wahoo, we want you to tag with Frankie. We're going to put the belts on you, and then we're going to start sending you all over the country." And Wahoo said, "I work alone." And I was told that Vern told him, "You're going to be traveling first class. You stay at the best hotels, and you're going to make a lot of money." Nope, I work by myself. I'm a single, and that's the way it's going to stay.
Wow.
So, and I didn't find this out, and that's the story I was told, that this happened sometime later, while he was still in Minneapolis. It would have been nice, because I think we could have drawn some big money.
I mean, when you say that, that Wahoo wanted to work alone and what have you, and the potential is there for you guys to make some money. Did you get along with Wahoo, or do you think it was just an ego thing, or he didn't like tag teaming? What was the situation there?
I got along with him great. I don't think he liked being in tag teams, and there's probably a little bit of ego involved in it.
Okay, sure.
But the 2 weeks we were in Japan, we ate together every day. And after the matches were over at night, we'd go find a Korean barbecue place and destroy some food.
Wow, I'm kind of surprised because it seems to me that would have been a natural. You and Wahoo, I mean, that has money written all over it. I don't get it.
I didn't either.
But looking back at Wahoo's career, I didn't even think of it until now. He was in a tag team, but it wasn't as an ongoing tag team.
It wasn't a team.
Yes.
In a team concept.
Exactly. And I just never stopped to think about that Wahoo really was a singles wrestler. Now I do know why. Frankie, I've got to ask you this. Now, from basically falling into the business and doing this career path that you did to becoming a major player on a major stage. Now, I didn't have the pleasure, and I will say it would have been a pleasure to work with you. I didn't do Vern's TV. I didn't start until 1985, and you were gone by then. But I got to ask you, what do you want your legacy in professional wrestling to be?
That, number one, I love the business. Number two, I respected the business. Number three, I respected the men in the business. And that includes the wrestlers, the promoters, the ring announcers, the ring boys, the guys who set up the ring and drove the ring trucks. That I felt that there is no way any one of us could be as successful as we are without the rest of these people involved in what we did.
Nice.
And I feel the business is the greatest business sport that you can get into.
I want to finish off my question to you by saying it not sounds like it is respect is the legacy that is attached to you. And I think that is an important word and an important attitude for just life in general. Be respectful, period.
Yep.
I love it.
That's pretty much it.
Wow. You know,
this is my feeling about 31 years in the business. I got to be 12 years old, playing wrestling in the backyard with my friends for 31 years, and I didn't have to grow up.
Oh God, that is about the best line that I think I've heard on these podcasts. That is, man, hits me right between the eyes, buddy. I get it. Before we wrap it up, let's go back to Australia.
Okay.
Because this was one hell of a time, you know, whether we're doing karaoke or, you know, whatever it was. And it was such a difficult tour. I mean, my God, Frankie, you know, you worked for 45 minutes a day and they fed you in the hospitality room and they gave us money to buy concessions and souvenirs and so forth. Rob Russin took us on this tour. Basically, I mean, it wasn't a tour, so to speak, because we pretty much worked at Australia's Wonderland. But to talk about that, so many of the guys that I talked to over the years, David Isley and Preston Steele and what have you, say that that was probably the best tour, best time that they've been on.
How can you argue with that?
Yeah.
We in number one, with the exception of maybe one or two guys, one guy in particular, we were enjoying what we did.
Yeah.
We were having a ball, both performing in the ring and interacting with the people and interacting with Australia. We were having a ball.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at this picture right now. This, I believe, might have been taken the day that we went home. And, you know, from the left, folks, that is Hillbilly Cousin Luke, and then Kamala, David Isley, and Gene Ligon, the Thunderfoots. There's Chief Frankie and myself. The camaraderie back then, Frankie, and then I think back, and Paul Orndorff was a mainstay back then. He's no longer with us. Kamala, no longer with us. Cousin Luke, no longer with us. Rob Russin, no longer with us. But the memories for me are just like yesterday. And as you said, you know, it was so easy in a sense. You know, we did 2 shows a day, about 45 minutes each in that tent at Australia's Wonderland. The fans were popping for arm drags and side headlocks. It was just a great experience.
To me, I think, and maybe it's because of finances involved, but Rob could have set up a tour across the entire country and we'd have been okay.
Yeah. It was amazing. It was just, if you could envision any scenario that was like picture perfect, you don't have to work too hard. As a matter of fact, we had like 3 or 4 days because of rain and weather that they canceled the shows, and you're still getting paid for it. It was great stuff. And, you know, thank you, my friend, for allowing me to be a part of that. I enjoyed it tremendously. There's a great shot. There's Gene Ligon, myself, and you, and that must have been at the hotel, the Parameta, in the cafeteria there. We spent so much time. Frankie, I'm gonna, as they say in the business, I'm gonna take it home right now. But you know, every now and then we have a guest on this show that I absolutely was looking forward to. Not only because of your career in the business, but because you're a friend. And listening to you and the stories that you've told about your relationship with the guys and how the respect that you earned from Nick and Ray and Pat O'Connor and Lou Thez, I'm sure you can count on one hand the number of guys in the business, especially those that came from your background, that have that kind of respect. And to listen to you talk about the fact that you respected everybody, from the wrestlers to the ring announcers to the crew, that's so refreshing. It's a world apart from the business today. I'm honored, buddy. I am absolutely honored that I have been able to stay in touch with you all these years. You're a class act, and nothing but love and respect for you, bud.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Same back at you.
Thank you, buddy.
Frankie, thank you very much. I remember watching you as Frankie Hill and then later as Chief Jules Strongbow. I never, I don't want to say think, but to meet you and to hear the stories and to hear the respect, not only that you paid to the business and to the boys, but that they paid back to you. That is an absolutely incredible testament to you as a wrestler and more so as a human being. So thank you. It was my pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure. One last thing, and it was a compliment paid to me by Bobby Duncombe.
Mm.
And I worked with him someplace on the East Coast, or I don't remember. But we got back to the dressing room, and I forget who asked him. It's Bobby, how was your match with Frankie? He turned around and looked at me, and he turned around and looked at whoever asked him. He says, "That's easy money."
Wow. Nice.
That is one of the nicest compliments I've ever received in the business.
Yeah, I hear these stories, and as the resident Gen Xer, I didn't get a chance to see you in the heyday. I've seen clips on YouTube and hearing these stories and just being able to put it all together. For someone that is just fascinated by the history of the business, to be able to hear these stories coming from you firsthand. And it's one thing to have the stories, guys, but I think it's also the context of the stories. It's amazing, and you are absolutely one of the best in the business. That in the stories, I mean, you've experienced a lot, and I'm very, very fortunate. I'm glad that I got a chance to get in contact with you, and hopefully I can call you a friend, because this has been absolutely fantastic.
Yep. Hey, just so you know, I'm right here. I'm right here.
Do you get to Crusher Fest?
No, I think about it, and then by the time I think about it, it's already gone.
Well, I'm planning on making a trip there. People have been bugging me, come out for Crusher Fest, and if you're in the neighborhood, for fuck's sake, and you could, stay out of the gym for 5 minutes, come over to Crusher Fest and say hello. I don't want to wait another 33 years, pal. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Frankie, you're a hell of a guy, and again, it was our honor to have you on the show. You wove a real tapestry of the business, and our pleasure, buddy.
Yep, my pleasure. Enjoying talking with you. Like I said, I'm right here.
Well, you're going to be right here more
just about
often
anything.
than you think. You're part of the family now, buddy. You're part of us. And in the words of Sal Correnti, no worries.
Oh, no worries until he shows up.
Have a good one, Chief. Love you, buddy.
Yep.
Take care.
All righty.
See you later.
Thanks, Chief.
Bye-bye.
There he is. Oh, wow. The stories that he had and the names. That's the joy of, when we put this thing together, came up with the concept, and you get to hear stories from individuals that had such an impact in the business, but to hear it from him, and now for me to go back and be able to look at it and hear those stories and put it all together. I mean, my appreciation and respect for him, I was looking forward to this. My appreciation and respect for what he's accomplished in the business, it's been magnified tenfold.
It's interesting, Chris. You probably will remember Frankie as a babyface teaming with Jules, with Jay Strongbow.
Yeah, well, that's where I remember everything.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember the WWF in New York. Absolutely. Like I remember the Strongbows from that. Like, but I don't remember a lot of the other things, obviously, because I didn't get a chance to see it or experience it.
It's interesting. Frankie made a kind of a brief mention of Joe Scarpa, Chief Jay Strongbow. Didn't go into a lot of detail about him, other than the fact that Jay seemed to be a little uppity, a little my shit doesn't stink, and just kind of in passing, the honky tonk man. I interviewed him probably 8-10 years ago, and he said the one guy that I dislike the most in this business is Jay Strongbow. So I might have to pick Frankie's brain about that a little bit. The point that I was making about you seeing him as a babyface, when we were on that Australian tour, he was a heel. He was Chief Jules Strongbow, but he was a nasty heel. And he would come in and he would insult the fans and insult Australia, and he'd work as a heel. And it was so good. And this guy, if you're a wrestling aficionado and you follow the business and you watch his matches, this guy was just so damn good. And I think that plays into why the Bockwinkel's and Stevens and O'Connors of the world took a shine to him. He made it look easy.
Well, go back to his very first match. Somebody saw enough in him to say, go into the ring. But I've never trained.
4 hours. 4 hours.
I mean, seriously, that in itself is a testament to what his ability was. Incredible story. I love this interview.
This was tremendous, and I can tell you the Frankie Hill, the Francis Huntington, the Frankie Hill, Chief Jules Strongbow that we saw here today. That's the guy. That's the real guy. I'm telling you, he is such a blast to be around. And damn it, I really want to get to Crusher Fest to meet up with Frankie again.
Perfect timing, because after you said that, I'm like, I haven't been there either. And I just looked to see when it is this year, and it is going to be the weekend of Saturday, May 31st and Sunday, June 1st. And Tito Santana is going to be like the big special guest. So that's my birthday is that Friday. So I might have to make that trip down to South Milwaukee. And I've heard that they might have some beer there.
Well, what's that got to do with you? You have no interest in
I've heard nothing but good things about it. So I would like to try a beer for the first time.
Good for you. Nice of you to grow up, Joe. Proud of you.
No. Hold on. I draw the line there. Don't ever accuse me of growing up.
Tubbsy, get the time off.